Hello, English learners, and welcome. I'm your host, Paul. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, thank you. Excited to chat about English learning today.
Today, we're diving into a challenge that probably resonates with so many of you listening.
Yeah.
That feeling, that mental wrestling match we sometimes have when trying to speak English.
Right, the overthinking.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You shared some fantastic material on this, and our mission today is really to get under the skin of why this happens.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe more importantly, how you can start speaking more, well, freely and with genuine confidence.
Absolutely. And we'll be looking closely at the English learning podcast transcript you sent over.
Great.
It's really packed with practical advice, explanations, really useful stuff for breaking free from this common trap.
Okay, so let's unpack this then. What does it actually mean? What does it feel like to overthink when you're speaking English?
Well, it's that split second, isn't it? Just before the words come out, your
Yeah.
brain suddenly turns into this internal battlefield.
Uh-huh.
You're trying to remember grammar rules, maybe ones you only half remember.
Right.
Your tongue feels tied up trying to get the pronunciation just so, and you're agonizing over finding that, perfect word.
It turns a simple chat into something really stressful.
Totally. It's like this internal pressure cooker, and for a lot of learners, it's overwhelming.
So they just freeze up.
Exactly. They get so fixated on this idea of getting it perfectly right, this kind of impossible standard, that they actually find they can't speak at all.
And what's the impact of that? I mean, on fluency.
Oh, it's huge. It's like trying to run with the handbrake on.
Good analogy.
Yeah, this overthinking, it completely disrupts the natural rhythm of speech.
You get those hesitations.
Right, the hesitations, those kind of awkward silences we all hate, the very act of trying so hard to be flawless.
Becomes the problem itself.
Precisely. It becomes the biggest obstacle to actually speaking smoothly.
So let's dig a bit deeper then. Why? Why does this overthinking grab hold of us in the first place?
Yeah.
What are the sort of core reasons?
Well, if you connect it to the psychology of learning a language, a primary driver is definitely that fear of making mistakes and fear of being judged.
Right. Worrying what other people will think.
Exactly. Learners worry sometimes intensely about saying something wrong or, people laughing or criticizing them.
So they become hyper aware of everything they say.
Hyper vigilant, yeah.
Yeah.
About every single word. It often comes from that inner critic we all have.
Oh, yeah.
Recognizing that voice and consciously deciding, okay, I'm not listening to you right now, that's a really crucial step.
And what else? Is it just fear of mistakes?
Another big factor is the fear of not being understood.
Okay.
Which then leads to this intense focus on choosing the absolute right words and achieving, perfect pronunciation.
That really clicks. It's like you fall into this perfectionism trap.
Totally.
The more you try not to make mistakes, the more you actually hesitate and delay speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Which, ironically, just makes you less fluent in the long run.
It's a classic vicious cycle. The overthinking just feeds the struggle you're trying so hard to escape.
So this really brings up mindset, doesn't it?
It really does. I
Right.
think the central message here, the key takeaway, has to be about shifting your perspective.
How so?
Moving away from that goal of, absolute perfect English, which is pretty unattainable anyway,
Right.
and focusing instead on clear, natural communication.
Treating English as a tool.
Exactly. It's a tool for connection, for sharing ideas. It's not supposed to be a test of how perfect your grammar is every single time.
The source material had some really good examples to illustrate this difference.
It did, yeah.
Let's look at those. First, the overthinking example they gave. It was something like,
Yeah. I want to say that, I think the weather is very nice today, right?
right? You can almost feel the effort, the internal struggle in that.
Absolutely. It sounds so clunky, doesn't it? So unnatural.
Yeah.
The speaker's just so caught up in trying to assemble it perfectly, word by word.
That the flow is completely lost.
Exactly. It loses all natural rhythm.
Okay, now contrast that with the natural version.
Which was just simply, the weather's really nice today.
So much smoother, effortless almost.
Precisely. And it seems like a small shift, but letting go of that need to dissect every single word before you speak,
It's a huge difference.
a massive difference in how natural it sounds and how easy the communication feels for both the speaker and the listener.
Okay, so that really begs the question then.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to aim for that natural way of speaking?
Yeah.
What are the payoffs?
Yeah, what are the actual real-world benefits of letting go of that overthinking habit?
What do you gain?
Well, probably the most immediate thing people notice is a big jump in fluency and confidence.
Okay.
When you're not constantly fighting that internal editor in your head,
Mm,
conversations just flow more smoothly, and naturally you start feeling more self-assured about speaking
I
English.
can see that. Because you're more present in the actual conversation, right? Not stuck in your own head.
Exactly, you're actually interacting.
Yeah.
And speaking naturally, well, it just leads to more effective communication overall.
Makes sense.
Conversations feel more fluid, they're more enjoyable for everyone involved, and interestingly, it actually sharpens your listening skills too.
Oh, how so?
Well, if you're not preoccupied with crafting your own perfect sentence,
Hmm.
you're much more able to focus on what the other person is actually saying, the nuances, and respond more, appropriately and naturally in the moment.
And it probably helps break that habit of translating everything in your head from your native language, too,
Oh,
right?
absolutely. That's a huge one.
Because that direct translation often sounds quite unnatural.
It really does. Thinking directly in English is kind of the ultimate goal for fluency.
Yeah.
And speaking naturally helps you bypass that often slow, clunky translation process. It lets you focus on the meaning, the message you want to get across.
Rather than the mechanics.
Exactly, rather than the sort of mechanical task of converting words. And ultimately, the source material really emphasizes this. People just want to understand you.
Right. Clarity over perfection.
Exactly. Natural speech helps you feel more comfortable, more at ease in English-speaking situations. And yeah, over time, it definitely helps you sound more like a native speaker, but without that intense pressure of having to be absolutely perfect.
Okay, so we've got a really clear picture of the problem, why it matters. Now, let's get into those internal hurdles. What are the common mental roadblocks, the things inside us that stop us speaking freely?
Yeah, what holds people back? Well, one of the biggest, as we've kind of touched on, is that fear of making mistakes.
That can be paralyzing.
It really can. It leads to so much hesitation, sometimes just a complete reluctance to even try.
Hmm.
Then there's the fear of judgment,
Mm-hmm.
that sort of underlying worry about how other people perceive you.
Your accent, maybe? Or grammar?
Exactly. Your accent, grammar mistakes, maybe your vocabulary choice. This self-consciousness just puts a real brake on spontaneous communication.
It's like you feel you're constantly being evaluated.
Precisely, like you're on stage performing instead of just, having a conversation. And then, of course, there's perfectionism itself. That relentless drive for flawless grammar, perfect pronunciation, the ideal word.
Which we said actually slows you down.
Ironically, yes.
Mm-hmm.
It hinders progress and creates a lot of unnecessary stress and frustration.
Any others?
Well, sometimes there's also this pressure, maybe self-imposed, maybe external, to sound exactly like a native speaker.
Ah, right. Trying too hard to imitate.
Yeah. And when you try so hard to mimic native accents or speech patterns, you can end up neglecting your own natural voice, your own style.
And authenticity is important.
It really is. Authenticity and clear communication are often way more valuable than, perfect mimicry.
Okay. So recognizing these barriers, fear, judgment, perfectionism, pressure, that's the first step. But how do we actually start, dismantling them? How do we make that shift from focusing on being flawless to just moving forward?
The key, and the source really drives this home, is making a conscious mental shift
Of perfection.
to progress.
Mm,
Focusing on progress. It's absolutely vital to truly accept that mistakes aren't just inevitable.
they're part of learning.
They're a valuable part of learning. Every single time you speak, whether you make errors or not, you're gaining experience, you're moving closer to your goals.
Right. So that mindset shift is foundational.
Yeah.
But what about practical things? Actions we can take.
Yeah.
How do we actually train our brains to be more spontaneous, less
Yeah.
deliberate?
Okay. Yeah. Tangible actions. The source offers several really effective techniques.
Like what?
Well, one fundamental step is just consciously trying to stop overthinking individual words as you're speaking.
Easier said than done sometimes.
True.
Yeah.
But practice just getting your thoughts out in English without getting tangled up in analyzing the perfect sentence structure before you even begin.
Okay.
Free awk exercises are brilliant for this.
Free talking.
Yeah, set a timer, doesn't have to be long, maybe just 2 minutes to start.
Okay.
And just talk about anything, whatever comes into your head in English without stopping to worry about errors, without pausing to check grammar in your mind.
Just let it flow.
Exactly. The goal is just to build the habit of speaking without that constant internal editor running commentary.
Wow, that actually sounds quite freeing. Just the thought of switching off that inner critic.
It really is liberating. Another powerful technique mentioned is shadowing.
Shadowing. Tell me more.
It involves actively listening to native speakers, say, from podcasts, interviews, audiobooks,
Uh-huh.
and immediately repeating what they say. Not just the words, but trying to mimic their tone, their speed, the rhythm of their speech.
Ah, so you're copying the melody of the language almost.
Precisely. It helps train your brain to process English and react much more quickly, more naturally.
That makes a lot of sense. What else?
Then there's a strategy called chunking.
Chunking.
Yeah, instead of
Like,
thinking word by word.
like translating directly.
Right. You learn to group words together into natural phrases or chunks. Like, I want to go to the store is one chunk, not 6 individual words.
Okay, so
Doing this significantly speeds up your mental processing and makes your spoken English sound much more natural and fluid.
any other techniques?
Mental rehearsal can be surprisingly helpful too.
So practicing in your head.
Yeah. Before a conversation, you know you're going to have maybe a meeting or ordering coffee. Mentally run through some key phrases, some
Do you
topics.
feel more prepared?
Exactly. It builds familiarity and boosts your confidence going in. And then, of course, there's no substitute for just doing it.
Real conversation.
Real-time conversations. Actively participating, even if it's just brief small talk with language partners, colleagues, friends, that real-life practice is crucial for making thinking and speaking in English more automatic over time.
So it's really a mix, isn't it? These targeted exercises combined with actually getting out there and using the language.
It is. And the source really stresses that consistency is absolutely the key.
Little and often.
Exactly. Regular practice, even if it's just for short periods, using these techniques helps your brain gradually rewire itself to think more directly in English and speak more spontaneously.
Okay, so beyond those specific exercises like shadowing or free talking, what about just everyday life? Can we weave English practice into our daily routines?
Oh, definitely. And the source has some great, really practical ideas for this.
Like,
Well, one simple but surprisingly effective thing is to just narrate your actions.
talk to yourself?
Kind of,
Wow.
but in English. As you go about your day, say, making breakfast, just describe what you're doing. Okay, I'm getting the milk out of the fridge. Now I'm pouring the cereal.
Oh, okay.
Sounds a bit odd, maybe, but it gets you thinking and speaking in English without pressure. Similarly, try describing your surroundings.
When you're out and about.
Yeah, walking in the park, sitting on the bus. Just observe and describe what you see, silently or quietly, in English.
Makes sense.
Another great tip is to listen to English podcasts or videos while you're doing chores, washing up, cleaning, and try repeating some of the phrases or sentences you hear. Multitasking your learning. Also, actively look for those little opportunities for small talk in English whenever they pop up. Don't shy away from them.
Even just a simple hello or asking about the weather.
Exactly. Every little bit helps. And maybe one of the most powerful habits, though it takes conscious effort, is to try to think in English when you're alone.
Instead of thinking in your native language and then translating.
Right. Try planning your day or thinking through a problem directly in English. It really helps break that translation habit.
What about watching movies or TV?
Yeah, absolutely. But maybe with a twist. Pause the show sometimes and try to repeat a line of dialogue you just heard.
To practice the natural rhythm and expressions.
Exactly. It helps you internalize how English actually sounds in conversation.
These are all really great practical tips. Things you can actually integrate without needing huge blocks of study time.
Right. It's about making English a constant, low-pressure part of your environment.
Creating that immersion in small ways.
Precisely. It's about getting your brain constantly engaging with the language in a natural, communicative way.
Okay, so we've looked at the challenges, the reasons behind them, and a whole range of really useful strategies, both specific exercises and everyday habits. Let's circle back now to the why. Why should we put in this effort? What are the ultimate rewards for learning to speak without that constant overthinking?
The payoffs are really significant and honestly quite transformative for learners.
We mentioned fluency and confidence earlier.
Definitely. That's probably the most obvious one. You'll see a big increase in fluency, speaking more smoothly, with way less hesitation.
Which must feel great.
It really does. And that directly feeds into a major boost in confidence. You start trusting yourself more in English.
Okay, what else?
You'll also find yourself reacting more quickly in conversations.
More spontaneous responses.
Yeah, which is crucial in real life, right? Conversations move fast. You'll also notice your listening skills improve.
Because you're not stuck in your head.
Exactly. You're more tuned in to the flow of the conversation, picking up nuances, understanding better because you're not preoccupied with your own next sentence. And importantly, sounding more natural helps you connect better with people.
How so?
Well, communication isn't just words. It's tone, rhythm, body language. When you're less tense about the mechanics, you can engage more fully, more authentically.
Making deeper connections.
Yes. And perhaps the biggest reward of all, you actually start to enjoy speaking English more.
It becomes less of a chore.
Less of a stressful test, yeah.
Mhm.
You can focus less on the nuts and bolts of the language and more on the actual interaction, the sharing of ideas, the connection itself. Learning becomes more enjoyable, less stressful.
Sounds like it really reframes the whole experience from something potentially intimidating.
To something genuinely rewarding and, well, fun.
Yeah.
And the more you practice speaking without that constant over-analysis, the more natural and effortless it feels. It makes the whole language learning journey much more sustainable and ultimately successful.
Okay, fantastic. Let's try and bring this all together then. Today's deep dive has really unpacked this very common, often frustrating experience of overthinking when you're trying to speak English. We've looked at the roots often, that fear of mistakes, fear of judgment, and that, quest for an impossible perfection.
Right.
But crucially, we've also uncovered a really powerful toolkit of practical strategies, ways to actually retrain your brain for more spontaneous, more confident speech.
Yeah, from those focused exercises like free talking and shadowing.
Those simple ways of just weaving English into your everyday life, making it a natural part of your routine.
And I think the key message, the thing to really hold on to, is that this journey towards fluent, confident English speaking, it's about progress, not perfection.
Embracing the journey.
Exactly. Embracing mistakes as just learning opportunities and consciously shifting your focus towards communicating clearly, naturally, authentically.
So a final thought for everyone listening.
Yeah.
As you go about the rest of your day, maybe just consider that simple act we talked about. Thinking through your very next task, whatever it is, in English. What's one small, actionable step you could take, maybe even right now today, to start building that habit of thinking and speaking just that little bit more freely?
Because it really is those consistent small efforts
Day by day.
that truly add up and make the biggest difference in the long run.